In this lecture, I would try to explore the possibility of reading John Milton's Paradise Lost as rather an overtly political text. Here I am using the term political, not in the sense of critical theory or Marxism, where it is said that everything is political. Of course, that is there, but more in the sense of real politics or actual politics. Now, while traditionally this epic has been read as a rereading of the Bible's story which needed to be justified again because the Renaissance had already taken place. And Milton is often seen as the last great product of the Renaissance, if not the last product. This is the dominant view given by a very important historian of English literature, that is Emile Leguy, who is not read these days much, but it is better if we read him. He has a single author work on English literature, and again there is a voluminous work on the history of English literature with M. Kazamian. Anyway, so Milton, if Chaucer is the first figure, then Milton is the last figure of the great European Renaissance so far as English literature is concerned. So Renaissance had raised doubts regarding God, regarding existence, which are not carried to that extreme point which Darwin or Herbert Spencer did, but in its own way, Renaissance did raise doubt. So religion was also reformed, Reformation came, and Milton was known to be a very religious person. You know, the Lady of Christ he was known as in his college days, school days. But possibly what is more important in Milton is its political fervor and fierce oppositional fervor than the religious one. Again, speaking in a nuanced way, we cannot differentiate these two, religion and politics. According to theorists, religion is always already political. If not, politics is always already religious, though for some it is. But still, I would say that Milton, though the initial Milton or early Milton may have been more religious, say if we read the Ode on the Morning of Christ's Nativity, and then when you go to later texts like Paradise Lost, this small poems within that on his blindness, and then Samson agonists, then the doubt becomes apparent more and more. So in certain ways we can say, is like Tagore, who moved from, in a way, subnationalism to nationalism to internationalism during the course of his career. Now, Puritanism is an extreme form of Protestantism which not only reject the tenets of the Anglo-Catholic or Catholic Church. Catholic Church has already been rejected by Henry VIII, but this Anglican Church also contained quite a few of the tenets of Catholicism, though it is generally thought that the uh, Anglican Church is a Protestant church, but this is not so. It is a mixed method church. So Protestants differentiated themselves or tried to turn this Anglican Church into more of a Protestant church, and those who are Puritans, they chose even further extreme methods. However, this is one part, that is Puritans' rejection of the church. What is equally or more important is that their rejection of monarchy or king. And in a certain way, this is a, though it is dangerous to say so, it is a happy coincidence that possibly we are colonized by the British, then being colonized by the French or the Russian. Why it is so? Because you see, the British in the modern age have been the first torch bearers of democracy, parliamentarianism against monarchy. It is another matter that they did not apply the same thing to the colonies, but then still it was not as brute as certain other colonies in certain other parts. Because the time when England went for a parliamentary rule, it was much ahead of other European countries. That is 1642 to to 1660 till the restoration, this entire period there was no king. We call it the Puritan interregnum. So it was ruled by uh, certain representatives of the people, headed by Oliver Cromwell, who was known as the Lord Protector of England then, but not the king. Now, it is also true that every system which, you know, uh, replaces an existing system finally ends up replicating or reduplicating what was there at place in the earlier system. The same happened with Puritanism also, but the end does not matter much. What matters more is the beginning, that they could visualize a form of rule and administration without a king or a monarch, and that too for 18 long years. Even 18 months would be too long a period than when the entire world was suffering under monarchy in certain ways. That is indeed a great achievement, not only for England but for the human imagination. That is what I want to submit. Now, but Milton was in a way very close ally of Oliver Cromwell, and then he was actually, to speak the truth, his Latin secretary, Oliver's Latin secretary, Cromwell's. So just as these days we have IFS officers and all, and then a very important one among them, possibly the most important, though he was not a signatory in the death sentence of the king, Milton. If you check online, you will find the name of all the signatories who had, you know, executed the extant king by order, but still Milton was as close to Cromwell as possible. But then the revolution failed. Monarchy was restored, and all of them were under a lot of pressure naturally. Even when one political party replaces another after democratic elections, then also there is reversal of fortune of the people belonging to the earlier groups. These days, of course, opportunists change their affiliation faster than a shirt or jersey, but Milton was not a person like that, and a few of his comrades. So he suffered, he was even jailed for his ideology, and then he stuck to his ideas in the best possible way. So he must continue to give vent to his regal ideas, democratic ideas. But how do you do that when monarchy itself has been restored? So it is said that Paradise Lost is the symbolic, utterance, or rather a codified utterance of Milton, which upholds the value of individual liberty and democracy. Here, Saturn is actually the hero, not due to what William Blake said, but it is because, I won't say even unconsciously, very, very consciously, Milton was affiliating himself with Saturn. And Saturn is partially Milton himself, partially Oliver Cromwell, or any rebel who has a fall. And God represents the restored monarch. Though monarchs are different, Charles the First and Charles the Second, there is a continuum. Monarchy as an institution is the same thing. So finally, like God becoming victorious and putting Saturn and his allies to great trouble, the same thing is expressed, same thing is seen in the fate of Cromwell, Milton and others. So that way it is a very judicious political allegory. Then you might say, then why did he say that justify the ways of God to men in the beginning? There are two things. One is that it is quite possible that he was being ironical. Milton for a long time has been taken to be quote unquote a straight or quote unquote almost a naive kind of person, but as times have past, we have seen that he is more intelligent than we thought. It is ironical because you cannot justify the ways of God to man. You cannot justify even the existence of God. Just as Bertrand Russell said, it is next to impossible to sit beside the bed of a 5-year-old child dying in cancer and believe in God. But so even the belief itself in God is practically impossible for all thinking man, let alone justification. So it could be a rhetorical device, just as in Julius Caesar Anthony kept repeatedly saying, Brutus is an honorable man, Brutus is an honorable man, like a refrain. But what he meant was exactly the opposite of it. That Brutus did the most heinous thing possible. He not only betrayed his friend but killed him. If you have such friends, you need not have enemies. This is a side observation though. Actually, enemies are not risky because you know who your enemies are. They're marked. Risk is from friends, so remember that. So I'm addressing my students, that's why. So that is one thing. And the second thing is that if we had directly written that I am here representing the story of man's freedom, man's rebel against king through God and Saturn, then he would again have been in jail. Maybe his head would have been chopped off. So, how would you think that a subtle writer like Milton, who wanted his thing to be done and yet not stopped from it, would do it better than choosing an allegorical form? So that is why, in all possibilities, Paradise Lost represents the battle of the Democrats with the Royalists, and then their downfall. And but then this is not the only thing. As I said in my initial lecture, a great text, and I still do believe in great texts, are such a thing that it can be read from various points of view at various points of time. Whether you know Rolla Barthes or not, that doesn't matter. So it is not like a detective story, or a kind of Mills and Boon novel that you read for once, you know the plot, and that is enough. There is nothing beyond the plot. But here there are many more things: the language, the style, the expression, the palimpsest kind of thing which records experience of ages, pre-Renaissance, Renaissance, Restoration. These are all there in line after line. So we have to be very careful while dealing with Milton and Paradise Lost. Thank you.